Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigria Gardenia. I am really, words. I always think I have all the words clear in my head before I start recording. And then I hit the record button, and for a second, everything just escapes and goes away, and I feel blank. But it's because I get this rush from the plants that I'm working with in this particular episode. And it's almost like all of the human words get jumbled with all the plant language. Let's call it language for a second, because I think that makes the most amount of sense. And then for a minute there, it takes me a minute to like put it all together. And this is an episode that is definitely that way, because in this episode, I am specifically talking about one plant that I'm working very closely with in this particular moment. And so this is episode 71, When Purslane Comes Into Your Life. Welcome to ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigrila Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. In this podcast, I share ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways in which plants can help you lead a naturally conscious life. Purslane, Portaluca. There is so much to say about this plant, but I want to give you a little bit of history, because this is a plant that I have worked with multiple times over the last years. And it's not the type of plant that I work with consistently for a long period. On the contrary, this is a plant that comes in waves. A plant that really comes into my life when I specifically need it, and in a very wild way. So this is an important spirit wild plant. For those of you that have taken my spirit wild plant quiz, for those who haven't, I've put it into the show notes so you can find it there. But in my spirit wild plant quiz, one of the plants you could be matched with is Purslane. And when I was creating this quiz, it all came from the individual interactions I was having with plants, right? This was not a quiz that was done mentally, but it was the fruit of relationships that I had been building with various different spirit wild plants that then asked me to put together this opportunity for you to connect, for them to be able to, for kin to be able to more easily interact with you in a more direct way. And Purslane was one of the last plants that made it into the quiz. I mean, actually, the quiz is always changing. I actually am adding more plants and changing things around as I go. So Purslane was one of the last ones from the first round. And Purslane was a plant that at the time I was one of the few plants that I could easily recognize. I don't know why. I could always just see Purslane. Key is a plant that has always been extremely present in various aspects of my life, but I knew nothing about this plant, so I didn't recognize the importance of this. It was just one of those things that was, I was walking down the street and I could see, I know this plant. Like, I've seen this plant before, because Purslane is a plant that I would run into regularly, sidewalks, city streets, many different aspects of such. And then one day, Purslane was like, hey, you and I keep bumping into one another. Let's have a conversation about why this is happening. And that was the first time I ever sat down and really started to work with Purslane, and eventually made Purslane into the Spirit Wild Plant quiz as a result of that. Now, over the years, I have kind of given a lot of space to these wild plants to sort of come in and out when are necessary, when I actually need their help the most. I really connect to all of these spirit wild plants in one way or another. And Purslane was one that I discovered multiple times, but specifically last year, Purslane came into my life at a period where I was really not expecting it at all. Like, I was not expecting to start this. And in the location, I didn't. So I have a little balcony space that has various, plants out there. And I always leave a little bit of space in the planters for just anybody who decides that they want to come to visit. And I've had many different visitors come over the years. And last year, Purslane made an appearance in a period that, oh, I, at first, when I saw purslane growing in one of these pots, I was asking myself, I was like, how did purslane, because I'm not on the first floor, I'm not down on the ground level, I'm higher up. So this balcony is pretty high up. And all of a sudden, to see purslane in one of these pots was very surprising because there's no purslane around. This isn't an area where I am in particular that has purslane already growing, like, oh, yeah, down the sidewalk, and therefore I don't think I've ever seen purslane in the surrounding area to my home. And so to see purslane in this pot really made me pause and stop and ask purslane, why are you here? And at that time, I got a very clear answer. You need to be nourished. And it's hard for me to sit back and try to explain to you everything that was happening in my life at the time. I can give you a few snippets, but to understand that those words, you need to be nourished, I'm here to help nourish you, was like a breath of fresh air. It was all of a sudden a moment of where I literally almost melted into this plant. So, as you know, from a physiological perspective, if you go and you do any research on the physical aspects of purslane, purslane is an extremely nourishing plant. Purslane has a high level of omega-3s, which is not something that we normally find in plants. It's one of the few plants that has a high level of omega-3. And key also has a whole series of antioxidants, vitamin A, vitamin C, melatonin, all these different antioxidants, and that really nourish the physical body. So, eating a cup of purslane is one aspect of that nourishment. And I have to say, most of the plants that I work with, I don't necessarily work on the nutritional value, for example, but that was one of the messages that I got very clear from purslane, which was, hey, I am here in your balcony space. I will reproduce very quickly. Give me a minute to start to reproduce. And this nourishment is both physical as well as spiritual and emotional. So I want to nourish you. Now, at the time, I was experiencing some issues with my lower back and my sciatica, which I had never, ever, 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 ever had in my life. Therefore, I didn't know how to deal with it. Like, I wasn't somebody who habitually had experiences with back pain or lower back pain or any kind of different aspect. So I wasn't sure, is this like, do I move more? Is this about something else? Like, what was going on? And so purslane is actually a really great plant for inflammation because the melatonin is really great to help you lower that inflammation. And I got a really clear sign from purslane in that moment that this wasn't about action, but it was about the opposite. It was about stopping, slowing down, and giving myself the opportunity to be nourished. And that was one of the first clear messages. Like, you're trying to, because, when you think about pain, depending on what kind of pain you have, some pains, you know that part of it is, oh, I need to move more. I need to stretch. I need to do all these, I need to make sure that that muscle, for example, gets used, not strenuously, but, gentleness and such. And I got a very clear message that the answer was, that is not where we're going. You need rest, but you need rest physically. You're being shown physically that you need rest, but it is not about that. Right now, you're in hyperdrive, you're dealing with a whole series of different things, and it is time for you to rest. And it was like strong, the message. Not only that, Purslane also has, high levels of vitamin A and vitamin C, which were vitamin A for me always has been associated to my eyes and something I have taken very good care of and tried very hard to take care of. And in that moment, I was so in need of rest, let's say it that way, that my eyes even felt tired. It's almost like there was a clear sign that says, close your eyes. This isn't about rest in the perspective of go sit and read a book or go and do something where you're like, it's not that kind of rest. It's literally rest. It's, also the melatonin is good for insomnia, for sleeping. It's about rest. rest, and this aspect of it. Also, stop taking external, like vitamin C, for example, in that particular moment. This was the case of what Purslane was telling me. I'm going to give you a series of things that you need because we need to marry the physical to the spiritual. It's so hard to put all these things into words, but it is important for us to recognize that when we give ourselves time to spend with these wild plants, with these spirit guides that are coming in this moment to really support us, there is so much we get out of it when we take the time to listen. So what I started to do was to actually spend some time with Purslane and really listen and ask the questions. So my rest time was done with Purslane in some cases. So very gentle meditation, also just spending time, not going out and looking for Purslane. This wasn't about activity. Purslane came to me. Purslane showed up and said, I am here, work with me. I want to be here to help you and support you. And it was amazing. It was an amazing, amazing experience. So much that I really remember that first day when I saw Purslane and got that message so clearly. And and then at some point after, a few, I don't even know how long it was. Maybe it was a month or maybe a little bit more, all of a sudden Purslane was gone. And none of the pots had Purslane anymore. The Purslane that was there had dried. And it felt like I had gotten the message. It felt complete. Like what was going on had completed a cycle. And this had happened to me before, several years before with stinging nettle, which was really powerful. In this case, it was very different because I kept encountering stinging nettle every time I would go out, every time I would go for a walk or a hike, or I would go to explore the valley or even places far away. I kept literally bumping into, which it's not very nice to bump into stinging nettle, but I kept bumping into stinging nettle in multiple different ways. And a whole other series of messages and work was happening from there. In this particular case, like I said, because what I needed was rest, Purslane came to me and Purslane showed up in my home. Mind you, I've had other spirit wild plants that show up in my home. As a matter of fact, right now, in addition to Purslane, there's 2 others that have shown up and that we're working with on different aspects, but I'm not going to add that to the mix because it becomes a little bit too much. So that was my work with Purslane last year. And I really did listen. My back healed, my sciatic healed. I've never had any issues since then. I do physical work in order work. Work is not the right. I do physical activity specifically for that to keep myself nimble. I've done a lot of other kinds of work and release and such like that. So Purslane really kicked off a process, but was very clear that said, this isn't about activity now. You kick this process off by resting, by allowing the inflammation to come down, by gathering up different aspects of yourself, by connecting into who you are and what is going on with you, and allowing all aspects of yourself, all those sides, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all of that to rest. And then from a place of rest, when Purslane left, was the clear sign that said, you're ready to go. And I still to this day appreciate so much that, because I would have never given myself that kind of rest had it not been for what Purslane, shared with me. So the other day, maybe about a week ago now, I walked out onto my balcony and sure enough, guess who was there? Yep, Purslane was back. But this time, Purslane had a very different message. So before I share that message, I want to share with you one of our eco-conscious business partners, because it's thanks to them and the support you give to them that we're able to continue with this podcast. I think we can all agree that music is the true universal language. In fact, what we think of as language is actually musicality. And I would argue that plants may be the greatest composers of all. By using the music of the plant's device, plants are now able to share their healing and communicate with us in a language we can understand. Music of the Plants now has different devices to experiment with, whether you're a musician looking to play along with your plant friends, a healer who wants to enhance their practice, or simply curious. In the show notes, you'll find a link to purchase the right device for you, such as this Bamboo M. There are also all sorts of fun extras, such as downloadable interspecies music and plant music merchandise. So click on the link to the music of the plants in the show notes to discover how you can start making music with your plants today. So Purslane comes back this year. What is the message? And when I first saw Purslane, besides the fact that I was excited, I haven't seen Purslane in more than a year, and to see Purslane growing again, and in this case, very differently. So last time Purslane was here, Purslane grew in kind of almost single stems, not really single, but very long, and like give yourself space and time. And now Purslane is growing in a much more bunched up way. It's so hard for me to explain how, but Purslane is growing all together. I'll add some pictures. That'll help. And so I sat with Purslane like over the weekend and was saying, okay, you're back. What's going on? Like what's happening here? What do I need? Where are we going with this relationship now? And it was really interesting because though last year was about rest, this year is much more about the balance between activity and rest. In other words, in this period, normally I travel a lot more. This year I decided not to travel as much as I normally do. There's things that are happening at Dumb&Her. I've got a new role. There's other aspects that I felt was really important for me to be home. And normally in this period, I'm not home. I'm not in Dumb&Her. So I've been struggling a little bit with the idea of I have all of these different things that I want to take care of, but it's very hot here right now. It's summertime for me. It's a period that I normally rest like last year a lot more. So what's going on? And Purslane was very clear with me that said, you're home because yes, you have new things to birth because it's the end of the Dumb&Herian year coming up at the end of August and the beginning of September. So we're getting into the beginning of the new Dumb&Herian year. There's a desire for you to kick off many things, but you also need to rest. Remember this conversation from last time. So I'm here to help you find balance. I want to work with you to help you find a flow between these two things. Now, I should go back and explain that many years ago, when I first left my corporate job, as you know, I used to work at Microsoft. I worked in that entire world of like software and development. It was very much everything go, 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 go. And one of the things that I really worked on after I left that world was finding my own body rhythms, understanding how it is that my body works. When is the times when I'm most productive? When am I most inspired? And when instead are the times that it's better for me to rest? For example, I'm a night owl. I love the nighttime. And I also like the mornings, which sounds contradictory, but it's really is. The daytime for me is a time of rest and friends and experiences with other people and doing things differently. If I am working late at night or working very early in the morning, I'm extremely productive and I have a lot of clarity and a lot of inspiration. And it's just a natural flow that moves for me. But around lunchtime, I shut down. That's when I like to go out and go out with my friends, go experience other things, read books, like study time. This is not a time for me to be productive. And I had kind of almost forgotten that. I was trying to push through, and because I have all these projects to work on. And so one of the things that Purslane reminded me of was how my flow was and whether or not I was actually in that flow, both for my personal rhythm, right? Like I said, I'm a night owl as well as a morning person. Those are my two best times, but also the fact of the season that we're in. This is summertime. And in Italy, where I am, it is very hot right now, which means I have, Cuban, Spanish blood. Siestas and I get along really well. So I should lean into my natural tendencies to do the siesta. So I've been enjoying siestas. I have been enjoying like having an early lunch, which is not very Spanish. Usually it's a late lunch, but still, because I get up very early in the morning, having an early lunch and then resting. I either take a nap or I go and I spend time with some friends or I take a walk. Actually, not so much the walk because it's been really hot, like I said, but more spending time with friends and doing things. I might go to the pool, or we're not near the ocean here, so it's really hard to go out to the sea. So the point being is that Purslane was telling me, hey, it is okay for you to find a new balance where you work and you not just work, but like your activity time, your time when you're really active, like churning through and getting things done and working on all these various projects that you're working on, which are all passion projects. It's okay for you to do them in these periods of time and for you to have long periods of rest in the middle. And this was so empowering for me because I had forgotten it. Like it's easy for us to get caught up in, oh, I have to get all these things done and it's the end of the Dominican New Year and I want to be able to have all these things done before the year ends. And but the reality is that me trying to push through things in the afternoon, I just wasn't productive anyway. So why not allow myself to be nourished in other ways? I nourished myself with sleep. I nourish myself maybe sometimes with, again, friends. I nourish myself sometimes even with distractions that help me kind of clear away the cobwebs and move into in different directions. Maybe I study a little bit, but things that are light. And then I pick up again later on. And so sometimes in the evening, sometimes when I feel inspired, other times, no, because I go out with my friends or I do other things. I love to cook. That's really nourishing for me. And so I've been mixing in more nourishment and I've been balancing better, flowing more between activity and rest. And that's a big lesson from Purslaine. The other thing that Purslaine really helps you do is rewrite your story. One of the things that wasn't doing as directly as I am now until Purslane kind of pointed it out for me was that reminder. This is the end of the Dominican year. And this end of summer period is a great time for you to sort of look again at where you are. You've spent all this time kind of evaluating and then creating new projects and planning out. And we know that the autumn season is a time of renewal in some aspects. There is a taking in of the nourishment that you have gathered, that you have received throughout the year. So this is a really great time to kind of look at what parts of my creative life need to blossom and give them space to blossom. Again, that whole balance between activity and rest. This isn't about pushing it. This isn't about sitting there like the springtime that's like, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. But this is more of, it's hot, let's allow the things to move into the direction that they're supposed to move into. And therefore, from there, we can see what direction to take in the autumn. So it's kind of like, this is a time for you to look at and reevaluate, for me personally. And I think all of us have to find our personal rhythm connected to the seasons. For me, this is a period, again, of it's lazier, it's slower, it's a time when it's about soaking up rest and nourishment, and then carrying out some activities that really make you sweat it and move it and move the energy, and writing that story and then giving yourself time to reflect on it, and writing it and giving yourself time to reflect on it and writing it. And that's what works for me. And what Purslane was trying to say to me was, you need to find your personal rhythm between activity and rest, and you need to see how that changes the story you are writing about your life. Your life story, how does it change? Where is it today? Have you given it space to really bloom? And these are some of the important pieces that Purslane brings up. So last year it was about nourishment, right? I needed to be nourished. And that still is a part of it, right? Purslane is making sure that I am nourishing myself, that I am taking the time that I need for myself. This is still an important aspect. And to make sure that I am taking in all the different types of nourishment that are important to me. And at the same time, this particular round, Purslane wants to make sure that the flow between these activity and rest, between writing and reading, and between moving and creating and actually evaluating that creation, all of this flow is really moving at a pace that is tailored, aligned for myself. And that is really a strong message of Purslane. Also, a reminder to take in lots of water because, Purslane is a succulent. So it is important to take in that water, but also water as in emotional water, flow of life, allowing those emotions to flow through you, taking them in, and then allowing them to be inside of you. Again, in that rest, holding that, and also in that activity period, in the use of it. Right. So moving between the two is extremely important. And this was something that Purslane wanted me to remember, take in all those emotions. I've been talking a lot about emotions in various different episodes of the podcast, and also so much in the naturally conscious community, because right now emotions are at an all-time high, like in the sense that we're really feeling them. And Purslane wants me to feel them, but wants me to flow with them, to take them in, and then to also use them. Take in, use, and then really give yourself space that when you take them in, you're also evaluating them. Where are they? What's going on? What do I need? And then using them or even expelling them, right? Activity, rest, right? Use and containment, all of this different flow between the masculine and the feminine energy. And all of this is part of the conversations that I'm having. How to do it, when to do it, where to do it, all of that is part of what I discuss with Purslane now on a regular basis, sometimes by ingestion, sometimes through meditation, sometimes through just sitting in Purslane's aura and Purslane's presence, sometimes through art and through all the different types of techniques, some of which are in the mini voyage with plants, right? If you go and you look at the mini voyage with plants, you can take a mini voyage with Purslane. And again, the links for that are all in the show notes, because that mini voyage gives you the opportunity to focus your time specifically with Purslane, and then with all the others that you can too. And so it really teaches you some basic techniques to be able to enter into this conversation, which is so important. It's so important for us and so important for our growth. So I'm really enjoying this time with Purslane because, again, it's very different from the way it was last time. And it's exciting to continuously develop this relationship and to have this type of spirit guide that comes, I know will come when I need key most. And who is also introducing me to some other spirit guides, because like I said, there's 2 other plants that have shown up for the first time this year in a very strong way. And these 2 plants are plants that I've never worked with before. So when I saw Purslane at first was in a different pot, like saying, work with me. And then at one point, Purslane showed up in a different pot that's in my balcony space and said, hey, these 2 over here that you've kind of been ignoring, don't ignore them. Don't ignore them. Let's all work together. I want to introduce you to them because I feel like it's really important for you to also get to know kin and to benefit from this relationship, because kin are going to be here more than I am. I'm here only for a specific purpose and then I'm going to go. But kin will be here for much more of the year. So I want you to spend more time. This is important, and almost feel like Purslane was being not just a guide from the perspective of guiding me directly through the messaging that Purslane had, but also guide in the sense of introducing me to other areas for me to expand and grow into. And I've never worked with Purslane in that way before, so it was also something that was very new, and it took a minute actually to get there. To be honest, it took me a minute to understand that that's what it was happening. So in general, when you see wild plants pop into your life, take that as a sign, right? Take it as an opportunity for you to enter into a relationship that is not necessarily the same relationship you've always had. It's a relationship that's based on where you are today. It's a continuation of the cycle of the relationship. You are evolving, the plants are evolving, and therefore the messages that are coming to you are going to be different, and the relationship between both of you is going to be very different. Give yourself space and time to actually move through this relationship and ask the question, why are you here today? Is it the same as last time? Is it different? Is there something new we want to work on together? And to give yourself the opportunity to evaluate how that plant enters into your life as a guide in any different aspect, physical, spiritual, psychological, emotional, like really open the door to these wild plants, to the guidance that they have. Remember, these wild plants are extremely resilient, something we need so much right now. We so need resilience. They are spontaneous. They have a wildness to them still. And they are plants that have learned to adapt or to adapt. So for kin to adapt their bodies for where exactly they're showing up, but also to adapt and change the environment to what they need. Each one of them has different characteristics that could really help you on your path. So take the time to listen, to sit with, to absorb, and also to act on what it is that you're receiving. And if you have any questions at all, or you need any support through this, you know that I'm here. You can come into the Naturally Conscious community. You can contact me directly, and we can have a discussion about what is happening, who's showing up for you, why they are showing up, and how you can expand and deepen this relationship to get the maximum benefit of what these plants have to offer, because they really do have so much to offer. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, remember, wherever it is that you're experiencing it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, the follow button, whatever it is you need to do in order to support this, because really this podcast can't exist without you. And also, I invite you to come over to the Naturally Conscious community and continue this discussion. There are the mini voyages with plants in Seedling Sprouts, and also just in Sprout discussions. We're constantly having conversations about the different plants that we're encountering and what it is that we're learning from them. So I look forward to having this conversation with you there in the Naturally Conscious community. Again, all the links for the mini voyage with plants, for the Spirit Wild Plant quiz, and also for the Naturally Conscious community are in the show notes. And I look forward to seeing you next time. That's it for me, Tigre Gardenia. I'm out. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. So join me, Tigre Gardenia, and my plant collaborators next time on ReConnect with Plant Wisdom.